Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're jumping into a high-stakes global chess match. It's all about a group of little-known metals that, believe it or not, power our entire modern world, rare earth elements. This is a story of strategy, of dependence, and a flat-out race to control the very building blocks of our future. So, let's get into it. So, to kick things off, let me just ask you a quick question. What in the world could possibly connect a top-tier military fighter jet, the electric car in your neighbor's driveway, and the smartphone that's probably in your hand right now? I mean, they seem like they're from completely different universes, but they all share a critical and very vulnerable secret. And the answer is every single one of them, without exception, depends on a small group of critical minerals. We're talking specifically about rare earth elements. You can think of them as the invisible, unsung heroes of all our high-tech gadgets, essential for everything from powerful magnets to the most sophisticated electronics. And that right there brings us to the absolute heart of the issue today. The supply chain for these materials, which we literally can't do without, isn't just a little fragile, it's almost entirely controlled by one single country. And that creates a massive strategic vulnerability for, well, pretty much everyone else. So, you have to ask, how did we get here? How did this happen? Well, in this first section, we're going to unpack exactly how China systematically and methodically built this dominant position, turning a simple geological resource into an incredibly powerful geopolitical tool. Let's be really clear about the scale we're talking about here. Sources use the phrase near total control to describe China's grip on the production of these minerals. This isn't just, having a lead in the market. No, this is a strategic choke point on the entire global economy. And this chart, it shows you exactly what that control looks like in the real world. You see, back in 2010, China got into a dispute with Japan and just decided to cut off its rare earth exports. At that moment, Japan was getting a staggering 90%, that's 90, of its entire supply from China. It was a massive wake-up call that sent shockwaves through governments all over the world. So, what exactly are we talking about when we say rare earths? Well, they're a group of 17 metals that just happen to have these really unique magnetic and electronic properties. They are absolutely non-negotiable for making the permanent magnets in EV motors and wind turbines. And they're just as critical for advanced defense systems, lasers, and pretty much all modern electronics.
Now, what's really important to understand here is that this dependency goes way beyond just rare earths. Just take graphite, for example, a mineral that is absolutely crucial for EV batteries. The EU gets 40% of its graphite from China. The US, 33%. This shows a much broader reliance on China for all sorts of key industrial material.
Okay, so we've established this monopoly, but now we're going to see how that economic leverage gets turned into something else. Geopolitical power. Because China has shown time and again, it's not just a passive supplier. It is more than willing to use this dominance as a weapon.
And look, this isn't just us guessing what they might do. We can actually trace how this strategy evolved over time. It started with that warning shot to Japan back in 2010. Then, fast forward to 2021, and their official 5-year plan makes it an explicit goal. And now, they've got a formal export control system in place, giving them the power to restrict access whenever they want.
And get this isn't some kind of secret memo that was leaked. It is a clearly, openly stated national policy. Back in 2020, President Xi Jinping himself said the goal was to deepen global dependence on China. The strategy couldn't be more out in the open. So what's the bottom line here? The sum of all these actions has created this massive vulnerability, this critical choke point that gives Beijing an incredible amount of leverage over the industrial and defense sectors of nearly every developed nation on the planet. All right, so faced with that pretty stark reality, the West is finally waking up and starting to coordinate a real response. And the first part of that response is what we're going to call the alliance strategy. Basically, building partnerships among friendly nations to create new, more resilient supply chains. You know, what's kind of funny is that the real catalyst for this was a domestic U.S. law. The Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, created these great tax credits for EVs, but only if their battery minerals came from North America or a free trade partner. Well, the EU called foul, saying it was discriminatory. And that trade friction, ironically, is what forced them to the negotiating table to hammer out a critical minerals agreement, a CMA, to fix the whole mess. And this isn't just a US-EU thing, not at all.
a much broader coalition has formed called the Mineral Security Partnership. I mean, just look at this list of members. We're talking about a powerful bloc of industrialized nations, all now working together to fund and develop mining, processing, and recycling projects completely outside of China.
So how do these alliances actually work in practice? Through these new critical mineral agreements. You can kind of see the US-Japan deal from 2023 as the first draft. It's pretty targeted, covering 5 key minerals. But the one being negotiated with the EU, well, that shows how fast this is all scaling up. The EU wants it to cover all 50 minerals mentioned in the IRA and wants much more binding commitments. The ambition is growing, and it's growing fast.
Okay, so alliances are one piece of the puzzle, but the other piece is a much more direct approach using government power and, yes, money to actively rebuild domestic supply chains. This is a huge shift toward a much more hands-on industrial policy. $400 million. That's obviously a big number, but what it represents is even bigger. It's a huge signal of a fundamental change in how the U.S. government sees its role in these kinds of strategic industries.
That $400 million was a direct investment from the Department of Defense for a 15% ownership stake in MP Materials, which is the largest rare earth producer in America. Think about that. The government isn't just a customer anymore. It's now a part owner.
But this deal is so much smarter than just throwing cash at a problem. The real goal here is to de-risk the entire American rare earth market. For years, private investors have been scared to even try to compete with China's state-backed industry. So the government is stepping in to completely change the math for them.
And this number right here, $110 per kilogram, this is the secret sauce. This isn't some random price. It is the absolute cornerstone of the whole de-risking strategy.
Here's how it works. The DoD has guaranteed MP Materials a minimum price of $110 a kilo for 10 years. That's way higher than the current Chinese price. It basically acts as an insurance policy. Now, even if China tries to flood the market with cheap materials to kill off the competition, this price floor guarantees that the American producer stays profitable and can't be bankrupted. It's pretty clever.
Which, of course, brings us to the final, critical, multi-billion-dollar question. China spent 3 decades building this dominance with focused, state-directed effort. So, can a patchwork of Western alliances and these new, clever industrial policies really be enough to challenge that kind of entrenched position? You know, we don't have the final answer to that question yet, but what is crystal clear is that the West is betting billions of dollars and a whole lot of political capital that the answer is yes. The era of passive reliance is over. The race to secure the minerals that will define the 21st century is officially on.